Hello and welcome to DD India. I'm Akshay Dongre and you are watching our special program, Voice of the Global South, a show that brings to you stories, news, achievements and concerns of a rising aspirational world. So let us begin with today's episode. The Israel-Hamas conflict has now entered the second month. The conflict has resulted into untold human tragedy, devastation of families and mass exodus. And as the people of Israel and Gaza mourn their losses, the international diplomacy has failed to yield any significant result in resolving the conflict, which is only spilling over to other regions as well. Let us take a more deeper look into what all has gone around in the recent past of the conflict and where is it heading.
Death, displacement, destruction continues as the conflict between Israel and Hamas wages on. 7th November marked a month of the ongoing conflict, which has now claimed the lives of thousands of people. Israel launched a strong counteroffensive in Hamas-controlled Gaza, following a deadly terrorist attack by Hamas inside Israel. However, a month later, both sides mourn the people who have lost their lives in the ongoing conflict. Israel held a national day of mourning on Tuesday, 30 days after Hamas launched a surprise attack on the country on October 7, killing more than 1,400 people and injuring over 7,000. In Tel Aviv, people gathered to light candles, grieve the loss of their family members, friends and neighbors, and call for the safe return of the estimated 240 people held hostage by Hamas in Gaza.
This is the first time that Israel has finally said, okay, we're putting our foot down. We care about the global attention and what everyone thinks, but still we have over 240 people out there, our brothers, sisters, mothers, and we'll do anything that we need to bring them back.
I feel sad, I feel resigned. I don't know how, I no longer know if we know what we're doing or anyone knows what they're doing.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, the Hamas-controlled health ministry puts the loss of lives at a much greater amount, claiming over 10,000 deaths, mostly civilians.
There are no available places for us to move to, so we stayed in our houses until today. We did not leave our houses. We stayed in the area just as we are.
Over the past 12 days, thousands of Israeli troops have encircled Gaza City, effectively cutting the densely populated coastal enclave into two, as they look to hunt down and eliminate Hamas fighters. While the offensive continues, concerns of a spillover of the conflict are visible in the entire region, with no sight of de-escalation. The United Nations has said that whatever has been done so far to end the conflict has been too little, too late.
It's absolutely essential that all hostages are released immediately and unconditionally. Terrible, catastrophic, I'd say, humanitarian situation. Lack of medicine in hospitals. So it is absolutely essential to have a flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza that corresponds to the dramatic needs that the population is facing. We are in intense negotiations with Israel, with US, with Egypt, in order to make sure that we have an effective humanitarian aid to Gaza. Until now, it has been too little, too late.
The conflict has already claimed the lives of a record 92 staffers of the United Nations, journalists and doctors. And while there are no signs of an end to the violence, it is the civilians, including women and children, who are paying the highest price.
In the first week of November, Nepal was shaken by 2 deadly earthquakes within a span of just 3 days, resulted in the death of over 150 people, leaving thousands homeless in freezing conditions. This was the worst natural disasters causing loss of infrastructure and human lives in Nepal since the deadly earthquakes of 2015. And now, the survivors are facing a shortage of food, clothes, and medical aid. In this time of crisis, while India as a first international responder, has provided significant aid to Nepal, the disaster has highlighted the need once again for a robust disaster relief framework at a global level to tackle such calamities.
A powerful quake of 6.4 magnitude jolted western Nepal around midnight on November 3rd, impacting the districts of Jajarkot and Rukum West. It was the most devastating earthquake to hit the country in 8 years, killing at least 157 and injuring more than 300. Hundreds of houses were reduced to rubble within seconds, leaving thousands homeless. Just days after, another 5.2 magnitude earthquake hit Nepal on November the 7th, whose tremors were felt even in India's capital, New Delhi, more than 800 kilometers away. The injured in Nepal were rushed to nearby hospitals for treatment, where some were critical and required surgery, while others had bone fractures from building walls collapsing on top of them. Rescue operations continued for more than 48 hours to save lives. Survivors in the quake-stricken regions of Nepal are left with no or limited resources as buildings have collapsed or developed cracks, making them uninhabitable. People were seen climbing over piles of bricks, rocks and wood, which were once buildings in the village. Residents looked through debris, retrieving what was left, and mourned the loss of what the future holds for them.
We have nothing left. Dust from the debris are entering into our noses and mouths. We can't see properly due to the dust. We have dust on our ears. What to do? We are in a very bad situation. The children are complaining that they are hungry. We don't have a place to stay, nor food to eat, or clothes to wear. No one is looking after us.
Nepal's Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal visited survivors and assured them of government support after many had to be evacuated to shelters after their homes were destroyed.
As Nepal has struck with the recent tremor, we have witnessed the huge damages of infrastructure. Government are working on ground. Injured were shifted to hospitals. Rescue works are underway.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was among the first international leaders who expressed grief over the loss of lives and solidarity with the people of Nepal. While on 5th of November, India delivered the first consignment of emergency relief materials worth 10 crore rupees to Nepal, following up on the commitment by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to provide all possible assistance to the Himalayan nation. Special aircraft of the Indian Air Force have transported multiple consignments of essential medical and hygiene supplies, tents, sleeping bags and blankets to the quake-hit nation. Meanwhile, Nepal is trying to get back on its feet. Rescue efforts have cleared collapsed roads and buildings. Medical staff and social welfare volunteers distributed food and medical supplies to survivors. As some villages were inaccessible by road due to the earthquake, rescue workers, including the Nepalese police and armed police, had to reach the affected villages on foot, witnessing falling rocks and landslides. The South Asian nation is situated within one of the world's most active tectonic zones, making it highly susceptible to seismic activity. Earlier in 2015, the country was hit by another powerful earthquake, killing almost 9,000 people, and is still recovering from the impact. Due to frequency of such disasters, Nepal continues to remain among the lowest-ranked countries in South Asia in terms of human development. However, with recent strides despite the challenges, experts have estimated that Nepal will be graduating to developing country status in 2026.
And India and Bhutan, in a bid to boost connectivity between the nations of South Asia, have agreed to finalize location for first cross-border rail link which plans to establish better transportation between the two countries. The development came during Bhutan King's one-week visit to India, where he met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India is Bhutan's largest trade partner, hence the railway project will be a significant milestone in boosting connectivity and bilateral relations between the neighboring countries as well. While traditionally, road transportation has been the primary means of connectivity between the two countries, the new project will provide an alternative mode of transportation and reduce travel time as well as cost.
The King of Bhutan, Jigme Khaisar Namgyal Wangchuk, who was on a week-long visit to India, met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and held discussions on the entire gamut of bilateral cooperation and regional and global issues of mutual interest. The Bhutan King commended the excellent organization of the recently concluded G20 summit hosted by India and forging consensus for constructive decisions and outcomes contained in the Delhi Declaration. He particularly appreciated India's efforts in effectively integrating the interests and priorities of the countries in the Global South in G20 deliberations and outcome documents. The King of Bhutan extended invitation to Prime Minister of India to pay an official visit to Bhutan, which the Indian PM accepted. There were agreements on both sides to bolster collaboration in trade, technology and cross-border connectivity, including a survey for the first rail link between the two sides to be built with Indian support. One of the biggest challenges for most of the developing countries in the Global South still remains connectivity, and this step brings Bhutan closer in connecting to South Asia. On his arrival in the northeastern state of Assam on November 3rd, the King of Bhutan was received by Chief Minister of the state. Both held discussions on infrastructure, partnerships, cooperation in healthcare, and people-to-people ties. It is the first visit for any monarch of the neighboring country to Assam and took place in the backdrop of the two countries completing surveys of the Kokrajhar-Jaipur rail link that connects Bhutan to Assam. On 5th November, Bhutan's king visited the capital city of New Delhi, where he was welcomed by India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. The Bhutan king shared his experience with S. Jaishankar about his first visit to the northeastern state. Jaishankar said that India supports the vision of sustainable transformation of Bhutan under the guidance of the King of Bhutan. During his visit, Bhutan King visited India's financial capital Mumbai on November 7th, where he met various eminent personalities. The visit by the King of Bhutan highlights the strong relations that the neighboring countries hold with one another and steps being taken by the two countries to enhance connectivity, trade, and cooperation.
And we will now take a small break here and be back with more Global South stories on the other side. Keep watching.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world, one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India and this is Voice of the Global South. Let's move on to our next story. Bangladesh for the past 2 weeks has been grappling with protests by garment workers demanding a threefold increase in their wages. And while the government of Bangladesh has announced a wage hike by over 50%, the protesters have refused to turn down the ongoing agitation. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has rejected any further pay hikes for the protesting workers. The 10,000 workers staging protest in the South Asian country's capital, Dhaka, are expected to adversely affect major luxury brands' production around the world.
Violent protests continue in Bangladesh, where another person was killed after a demonstration for more pay by government workers in Bangladesh turned violent on Wednesday as police used tear gas and rubber bullets while protesters threw stones. The latest death was the third since protests erupted in the past week. The Bangladesh government on Tuesday announced that the minimum wage would rise by 56.25% to 12,500 taka, about $114 a month from the 1st of December, the first increase in 5 years. The workers, however, call it too little too late, demanding almost twice the amount offered.
Do you see the price of potato and onion in the market? The new hike will not compensate for the deficit of our needs. It should be raised further. We have to pay rent, food, and children's education. The market economy is on fire. How can we go on like this?
Meanwhile, with the ongoing protest, many of the garment stores have been shuttered, leaving thousands of workers unemployed.
We all know how it works, but they are scared to pay us according to the new wage scale. That's why they kicked us out and are not recruiting us back anymore.
For decades, low wages have helped Bangladesh build its garment industry, with some 4,000 factories employing 4 million workers, supplying to luxury brands such as H&M, Gap and Zara. Ready-made garments are a mainstay of the Bangladesh economy, accounting for almost 16% of GDP. However, this is not the first time such a protest has erupted in the South Asian nation. Similar protests erupted in 2006 when protesters torched at least 16 factories in wage protests that left several people dead. Major wage and safety protests also erupted in 2013 after the collapse of the Rana Plaza garment factory building, which left at least 1,134 people dead. But the question remains that while multi-billion-dollar luxury garment industry gains from cheap labor in nations like Bangladesh, why do issues of minimum wage have to be constantly raised via protests and violence?
And now moving on to Africa, the world is facing extreme weather conditions due to the climate change. However, the impact has been significantly more in the nations of the global south who are witnessing droughts, extreme rainfalls, and at times both. Somalia in East Africa is one such example, which is witnessing most severe floods it has seen in decades that has killed at least 29 and displaced hundreds of thousands of Somalians. The irony, however, is that the country just a few weeks back was dealing with a record drought. Let's take a look at how the climate change has impacted the African region and what are its consequences for the world.
It is raining on us for the 5th day. Lying in the rain killed 2 elderly women. Our makeshifts were washed away. Children are missing now. We do not know whether they are dead or alive.
Faduma Abdulkar is one of over 1 million Somalians affected by the deadly flash floods that have devastated the East African nation. Over 1 million people in Somalia have been displaced by the incessant rainfall and frequent flash floods in several parts of the country. Amina Mohammed is one of the displaced residents who had to live with her family due to the non-stop rains in order to find shelter.
We had come from Lower Shabelle region. We came here where it is raining day and night. It is a big problem. We are suffering.
Somalia has become a hotspot for extreme weather conditions like flash floods, water scarcity, and drought. It's also the second most vulnerable country and is plagued by illegal logging, deforestation, and land degradation. And now, after heavy rains and flash floods killed over 24 people, the government has declared an emergency, displacing over 1 million people to relief camps. The United Nations Environment Programme is helping the Somalian government to design nature-based solutions that reduce flood and drought risks and ensure that communities cope with future climate shocks.
There is quite a big irony around people fleeing for the fact that they don't have water and now fleeing because they have too much water. And so it's a real dichotomy or problem that we're seeing. And the IPCC report quite clearly says that this cycle of flooding and drought is going to continue, and we're going to see this more and more unless we really do something on a global scale to try to reduce these and try to stay on this Paris 1.5 alignment.
Continuous armed conflict as well as increased food prices by Russia-Ukraine war have made the crisis worse. The UN says more than 40,000 people died last year because of the drought. About half of them are children. And these floods are now killing even more. With the impacts of climate change increasingly visible, the recent disasters once again highlight the need for the world to act fast to contain the outcomes of global warming that have disproportionately affected the global south.
Staying with Africa, the African policymakers and foreign investors discussed a roadmap for extraction and value addition of critical minerals like copper, cobalt and lithium at a summit in South Africa. The minerals found in many African countries are essential components in today's rapidly growing clean energy transition. DD India's Chris Okamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The African continent is endowed with huge mineral deposits. In recent years, the demand for minerals such as copper, cobalt, lithium and nickel has risen significantly due to the global shift from fossil fuels to clean energy. The Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the African countries with large reserves of those minerals. But its population has drawn little benefit from that wealth because of decades of conflict and corruption.
Things are getting a lot better now with the lithium that we know is there now, so there's a lot of effort to make it better. Airplanes flying to Manono. But nonetheless, there's quite a lot of work to do on the social scale, and medical facilities, and children, and schooling, and just making sure people eat every day. So big challenges. Yeah.
Policymakers on the African continent met at the Critical Minerals Summit in South Africa to try and improve local supply chains and establish sustainable practices. They believe fostering collaboration and innovation will create more jobs and drive economic growth.
We want to enable the local population to become experts and be able to offer services to us and to other companies through a skill transfer program.
The officials also discussed the development of diverse and sustainable clean energy supply chains at the summit.
Critical minerals are essential for economic development and national security. Mining experts are seeking to ensure that the supply of those minerals continues as the world embraces clean energy technologies and transitions towards a sustainable future. Chris Okamringa in Kinshasa for DD India.
And this is all we have for you in this episode of Voice of the Global South. Let us know your thoughts on the program. You can also connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching a special program and a very happy Diwali to all of you. News and updates continue on DD India.